I talk to you every day, boy. Please call me. Lord, somebody out there knows something about my grandbaby. Please tell us, let us know.
Calm our hearts and our minds, to give us strength to do the right things and to find this young man, this young angel.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
I just want my baby home. If anybody know anything or seen anything, please reach out. I want my baby home bad.
I just want my grandson home. Return home safe. Somebody out there knows something. You know, it's been since Thursday, since Jadarius has been missing.
Investigators say the teen is about 5 feet tall and weighs under 100 pounds.
I'm stressed out to the max. His mama going crazy, his daddy going crazy. Please, please let Baton Rouge Police Department know something.
His family says he's going into his sophomore year at Estroma High, and they're growing increasingly worried as days pass without answers.
I'm here looking for him, searching for him. So I just want somebody to say something. Somebody knows something.
A 15-year-old boy got into an argument with a 51-year-old man. By most standards, that argument shouldn't have mattered. Arguments like it happen and get forgotten within a day. This one didn't get forgotten. Hours after it happened, the boy was gone. 2 weeks later, that same man was arrested and charged with his murder.
Announcing Parm's arrest at the state police headquarters this evening. According to arrest records, police believe it started on June 4th after Manyweather discovered Parms was preying on his 16-year-old friend. Then Manyweather allegedly got into a heated argument with Parms before Parms drove home. In the following days, Manyweather was reported missing.
This video covers a case that's still active, including details from police affidavits that some viewers may find disturbing. Nothing here is shown for shock value, but if sensitive subject matter involving violence against a minor is difficult for you, please watch with care. Welcome to Fatal Consequences, and before we go further, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. If you want to follow this case all the way to a verdict, subscribe, share this with someone who'd want to know how it ends, and drop a comment if you've got thoughts as we go. Now, here's where it started. Jadarius Manyweather was 15 years old. He was about to start his sophomore year at Estroma High School. That summer, he had a job, and his family says he was the kind of kid who checked in without being asked, the one nobody had to worry about. He lived in the Foster and Winborn area of North Baton Rouge. Locally, people call it Ghost Town. On the evening of June 4th, Jadarius got on a bike, a small one, built more for a kid than a teenager his size, and rode to Bradley Street. He was going to see a girl, 16 years old, someone he'd known a long time. She wasn't home yet. She was out getting food. The person she was with was a man named Maurice Parms. Parms was 51 years old. At this point in the timeline, he's just a name, someone connected to the girl Jadarius had come to see. Nothing about that fact, on its own, explains what happened next. When the girl and Parms got back to the house, Jadarius was still there, waiting. And according to what investigators would later document, something happened between him and Parms. Not a passing exchange, a tense, drawn-out disagreement, centered on how Parms had been behaving toward the 16-year-old. That's as far as the public record goes on what was said. What's known is that the disagreement happened, and that it was serious enough for people to remember it clearly afterward. After that, Parms left and went home. Jadarius did too, or at least, he started to. He got back on the bike, the same bike he'd ridden over on, and sometime in the early hours of June 5th, somewhere between that house on Bradley Street and his own front door, he disappeared. His phone went dead. No calls, no texts, nothing. For a kid who checked in on his own, without being told, that silence didn't make sense to the people who knew him. It didn't take long for his family to realize something was wrong. By morning, Jadarius Manyweather had been reported missing. That's where the case starts. A bike ride home that never finished. A disagreement the night before that, at the time, looked like nothing more than that, a disagreement. Nobody watching it happen had any reason to think it was connected to what came next, but it was. Once Jadarius was reported missing, the search started fast, and it grew fast. The Baton Rouge Police Department opened the case. Within days, the United Cajun Navy joined. a volunteer search and rescue group with experience in exactly this kind of effort. Their incident commander, Josh Gill, led the coordination on the ground. Volunteer Natasha Pickens worked alongside him, organizing search groups day after day. Team Texas K9 brought in dogs trained to track scent across long distances. At its peak, more than 100 volunteers were showing up, most of whom had never met Jadarius or his family. They searched the obvious places first, then the places that weren't obvious at all. Scenic highway, the levee, the river, abandoned houses scattered through the neighborhood, dumpsters, checked and rechecked. Eventually, the search extended all the way to a landfill in Zachary, a sign of how seriously investigators were treating every possibility, including the worst one. The city backed the search with money. Baton Rouge Police Chief T.J. Morse and Mayor-President Sid Edwards held a news conference announcing a reward for information, an amount that climbed over the following days up to $10,000. That kind of reward, for a missing persons case, is not standard. It told the public exactly how urgent this had become.
Thank you for being here. We're calling this little briefing here basically on a missing child in Baton Rouge, Jadarius Manyweather. I have a lot of emotions about this, like most people do. I have been in contact with the family, in particular his mother, and we've spoken every day for the last 5 days. What I want Baton Rouge to know is we lose things all the time. When I lose my glasses or I lose my keys, I lose my cell phone, and there's a panic, and as fast as we can, we got to find it. I'm asking Baton Rouge for help. This isn't a faceless kid. This kid belongs to somebody. This is somebody's baby. And when Baton Rouge starts rolling the way I want it to roll, and generally it does, it's everybody's baby. We lost a son of Baton Rouge is lost out there. I need to thank everyone who is, and you'll hear from some folks today that have worked really hard to try to locate this child. But we're approaching 2 weeks. And I want to say it again. This is a son of Baton Rouge. It's one of ours. We need the public's help. We need anybody that has any information. And I know people have been working hard, but none of us should rest until we figure this out. Can you imagine the family? Can you imagine the mother? So I am pleading with Baton Rouge, number one, any help you can give, any information you have to what happened to Jadarius. We need it. We need that information. Because I can tell you now with the law enforcement and the people we have working on this, it's not if we find out, it's when we find out. Here again, Baton Rouge, this is a great city. This is our child. Please help. $10,000 in your pocket. Come get it. Give us the information.
At one point during the search efforts, a family member named Tabitha spoke directly to the cameras. Her message was simple: please help us bring Jadarius home. That was the search everyone could see. Volunteers in the heat, dogs working the ground, a reward climbing by the day, a family asking the public for help. There was a second search running at the same time, one that wasn't happening outdoors at all. While volunteers were out walking the levees, detectives were doing a different kind of work, the kind that doesn't show up on a live stream. They were going through phone records, message threads, call logs, timelines, piecing together who Jadarius had been in contact with in the days before he disappeared, and who those people had been in contact with in turn. But this isn't where the case turned. It turned when detectives pulled the phone records of the 16-year-old girl Jadarius had gone to see on Bradley Street. Going through her messages, investigators found communication that had nothing to do with a missing bike or a missing teenager. It connected directly to a 51-year-old man, Maurice Parms. Up to that point, Parms was a name attached to one detail in the timeline, someone who happened to be there the night Jadarius vanished. The phone records changed that. They gave detectives a reason to look at him directly, and to keep looking. That shift, from a name in a timeline to the focus of an investigation, is where this case stopped being only a missing persons search. The charges were indecent behavior, with a juvenile and computer-aided solicitation of a minor. These charges came directly out of what detectives found while going through the 16-year-old's messages. According to the arrest documents, Parms had described their relationship in explicit terms. In one message, he wrote that he couldn't wait until people could see what they had. In another, he referred to his 7-year-old daughter as the girl's stepdaughter. Investigators also cited alleged Cash App payments sent from Parms to the teenager. Taken together, this was the evidence behind the charges, a pattern, in writing, that detectives say pointed to an ongoing inappropriate relationship between a 51-year-old man and a minor. Here's where the case gets complicated, and where it's worth slowing down to explain how the law actually works in a moment like this. These charges were serious, but legally, they had nothing to do with Jadarius's disappearance. Under the law, you can only charge someone with what the evidence at that point can prove, and at that point, the evidence prosecutors had connected Parms to the 16-year-old girl, not to the missing teenager. There was no warrant, no charge, nothing on paper tying the two cases together. So when it came to bail, the court was only weighing the charges actually in front of it. Parms posted a $7,500 bond, and he was released. That single fact, a man connected to a missing child's case walking free on bond, is what the public latched onto. People online and in the community noticed that someone who'd surfaced in the middle of a search for a missing teenager was now back home. There was no official statement connecting Parms to Jadarius's disappearance. Investigators wouldn't confirm or deny it. But the timing alone was enough to keep the conversation going and to keep pressure on the case from outside the department. Behind the scenes, that pressure didn't change how detectives had to work. To search Parms's property, investigators needed a judge to sign off on a warrant, and that requires probable cause, a legal standard that means showing a judge specific facts that make it reasonable to believe a search will turn up evidence of a crime. It's not enough to suspect someone. You have to demonstrate, with real documentation, why a search is justified. That bar exists specifically to prevent searches based on hunches. So while Parms was out on bond, detectives were doing exactly that, building the documentation, piece by piece, that they would eventually need to go back to a judge. This is the part of true crime cases that usually gets skipped, the legal mechanics that decide who stays free and for how long, and what it actually takes to change that. If that's the angle you want more of, this channel is built around it. Subscribe, because we're going to keep walking through how these cases are actually built, not just what happened in them. By June 20th, detectives had what they needed. A judge signed off on 3 separate search warrants, all tied to Maurice Parms. One of those warrants targeted his home directly. When officers executed it, they removed a large slab of cement from his property and took it in as evidence. On its own, that detail doesn't explain anything. But investigators don't haul away a piece of someone's yard unless they have a specific reason to believe it matters to the case. The same warrants gave detectives access to surveillance footage from the area, and that footage is where the investigation moved from suspicion to something far more concrete. The footage showed a small bike being ridden through the area, a bike matching the description of the one Jadarius had taken that night. The person riding it got off and discarded it. Other items connected to that same sequence were thrown into nearby garbage cans, the kind of disposal that investigators say points to someone trying to get rid of evidence quickly. Separately, footage also captured Parms's vehicle, a white 2014 GMC Sierra. At one point, he's seen wiping the truck down with a rag. When investigators examined it directly, they found bloodstains, a substantial amount, soaked into the surface, in spite of that cleaning. The warrant also references a witness account from that night. According to what's documented, a tall individual was seen in a prolonged altercation with someone considerably smaller, an exchange that witnesses say went on for several minutes, not seconds. A third voice is described in the account as well, asking for the fighting to stop. Investigators have connected this account directly to the events of that night, though the warrant does not specify the exact location where it occurred. When detectives brought all of this to Parms, his own account didn't hold up. He told investigators he had been at the home on Bradley Street that evening, but said his contact with Jadarius was brief and that he left shortly after. The evidence told a different story. Cell phone data showed that Parms's phone did not move from his home during the early morning hours of June 5th, the exact window investigators say matters most. His truck, on the other hand, did move, leaving and returning within that same stretch of time. A phone that stays still while a vehicle doesn't is not, by itself, proof of anything. But it's the kind of inconsistency that gives detectives a reason to keep pulling at a story. On June 20th, Maurice Parms was arrested again, this time on a charge of first-degree murder, on top of the charges he was already facing involving the 16-year-old.
All right, so we're here today to announce just 2 weeks after the first initial report of missing person Jadarius Merriweather, we've made an arrest in that case. Mr. Parms, 51 years old. Detectives linked the investigation, multiple detectives involved over the last 2 weeks, found enough probable cause to charge Mr. Parms with the first-degree murder of Jadarius. They got an arrest warrant signed by 19th JDC late last night. After that arrest warrant, we conducted about 3 search warrants starting early this morning through different locations around Baton Rouge, recovering more evidence, and we are safe to say now that we are charging him with the murder of Jadarius.
Has Jadarius' body been found?
No, we have not located his body. This is still a very active and open investigation. The rest is just the beginning. Right, we are going to work with the District Attorney's Office and 19 JDC to make sure that Mr. Parms is, held responsible for this. Very high bond, if any. Give them all the information. We are still asking for the community's help. We had a lot of evidence come in before our press conference, and some of the evidence you're going to see as the arrest warrant becomes public record. Even some information after the press conference that was able to go into us being able to draft this arrest warrant for Mr. Parms. So we're going to continue to ask for the community's help. If you know something, please still reach out to Crime Stoppers, reach out to us. Now our focus kind of shifts into bringing Jadarius home for his family.
Under Louisiana law, a murder charge can be elevated to first degree when specific aggravating factors apply, and in the warrant, investigators cited 2 of them: planning and concealment surrounding the killing, and a separate underlying charge of cruelty to a juvenile connected to the same incident. At the press conference announcing the arrest, Police Chief T.J. Morse laid out where the case stood. He said all of the evidence collected pointed to a violent encounter between Parms and Jadarius, one that ended in the teenager's death. He added that the department's focus had now shifted, from finding answers to finding Jadarius himself, so his family could bring him home. Mayor President Sid Edwards spoke after him, addressing whoever still had information they hadn't come forward with. He put it plainly, "It's not if we find you, it's when we get you." Parms was booked into East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. The case had moved from a missing persons file to a homicide investigation, built not on a confession, but on cement, footage, bloodstains, and a phone that never left the house. As of right now, this case has not reached a resolution. Police have stated that Jadarius Merriweather is dead. That determination has been made despite the fact that his body has not been recovered. Maurice Parms remains in custody at East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, held on a charge of first-degree murder. The case is active, and it is moving toward prosecution. The search for Jadarius hasn't stopped just because an arrest was made. In the days after Parms was booked, investigators and search teams went back out, covering ground methodically. They swabbed the area near Winborn Avenue and Conrad Drive, the same stretch tied to the night of the disagreement. From there, the search expanded outward, to wooded areas off US 61, to bridges, to an abandoned church behind a Salvation Army location, and eventually to the landfill in Zachary. At one point, the total ground covered by searchers reached close to 1,000 acres. As of today, none of it has produced his remains. It's worth being direct about where this stands legally. Maurice Parms has been charged. He has not been convicted. Everything described in this video, the footage, the bloodstains, the timeline, comes from warrants and statements made by investigators, not from a verdict. A courtroom, not a headline, will be the place where guilt is actually decided. and that process hasn't happened yet. Strip away the case file, and what's left is a 15-year-old who had just started his first job, who was heading into his sophomore year, and who, by every account from the people who knew him, was the one his family never had to worry about. That's not a detail meant to add weight to this story. It's just who he was, before any of this happened to him. This case isn't finished, and neither is the search. If you have any information about what happened in the Foster and Winborn area in early June, or about where Jadarius might be, contact Crime Stoppers at 225-344-7867 or the Baton Rouge Police Department directly at 225-389-2000. You can remain anonymous. A single call could be the difference between his family continuing to search and finally being able to lay him to rest. We're going to keep following this case until there's a verdict, because that's what a story like this deserves. Not a headline that fades, but an ending that's actually followed through to the end. If that's the kind of channel you want behind you, you're already in the right place.